Cashflow Diary Podcast, episode 585.
Welcome to yet another exciting episode of the Cashflow Diary Podcast, the podcast that teaches you insider tips, tactics, and strategies for creating leverage streams of cash flow into your life. Learn from top-performing entrepreneurs, business owners, investors, and thought leaders from across the globe as they share their secrets to success. Like what you learn on this and other Cashflow Diary podcast episodes? Go to learninvestingnow.com and sign up to receive powerful tips and information that will help you succeed as an entrepreneur and investor. Now, here's your host, investor, entrepreneur, business owner, educator, speaker, author, and master facilitator of Robert Kiyosaki's cash flow game, Jay Massey.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of the Cashflow Diary Podcast. I'm your host, Jay Massey, and I'm glad that you are here today because we are going to talk about something that, well, I know it's important. And unfortunately, at times, we as entrepreneurs, we don't want to focus on it. See, no matter how good you are at the thing you do, no matter how great your product is, there's still another part of your business that, well, sometimes can be ignored. Dare I say, neglected. What it comes down to is we got to manage the business, well, of the business. And to do that sometimes it's not fun, it's not sexy, not even necessarily attractive. And in fact, be honest, you haven't done it as well as you should. Well, I'm excited because there are entrepreneurs out there who also know that we are doing that same thing, and they then take that and make a solution for you and I. And I have with me today one such entrepreneur, and I'm excited to introduce him to you because I think it will make a difference for the outcome for you this year. So with that said, I have with me none other than Ilya Radzinsky. He's the co-founder of TaxDome, a cloud-based practice management solution targeted to small and medium firms. That's where you and I go, yay, it's not for the big guys, it's for you and I. And this is why it's important. We're out there, we're all competing, we're all doing the best we can to make sure that we deliver quality service, right? And at the same time, we know the big guys, well, they've got all manners of IT budgets and everything to compete. And sometimes we need a little help to level the playing field. So what I'd like you to do is to get ready to listen, learn, and love Ilya Radzinsky. Ilya, how you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you for the wonderful intro.
I'm glad that you are here and excited because I have a feeling you're going to relieve some pressure for people. And I want to see that happen. But before we get too far, I've got to ask you the same question I tend to ask everybody else. You ready?
I'm ready.
All right. I look at today's entrepreneurs a lot like yesterday's superheroes. You know, Batman, Robin, Wonder Woman, etc. You get the idea. Because I see that entrepreneurs and superheroes have a ton of things in common. For example, as a entrepreneur, I can envision myself running around town. You know, maybe I'm wearing a cape, but I'm saving my customers from danger one sale at a time. Also, though, like a superhero, an entrepreneur has a beginning. So if you think about Spider-Man, for example, there was a time where he was just a kid going to school, hoping to get good grades, taking some photos, but then he gets bit by a spider, discovers that he's got a superhuman ability, and now he's presented with a choice. He has to choose whether to use his newfound powers, whether for good or for evil. So my question to you is as follows. Before TaxDome, but before even you fell in love with skiing, what we want to know is, who is Ilya Radzinsky?
That's interesting. So it's funny. Looking back, I think I always had an entrepreneurial bone in my body. So, and it really revealed itself through my adolescence. So when I was little, I wanted to own a restaurant, and I dreamed of having my own table in the corner of a restaurant. You know, kind of like an Iraqi. But the closest I ever got to this dream was when I was a busboy at 15, trying to get my foot in the door. But to be honest, it was way too hard. I didn't last longer than a week. So I had to get a little creative. and I started my first business. So I used to play video games, and I sold virtual items on eBay. Now, this was before the idea of farms, and when you had small little armies of people playing video games for the sole purpose of selling goods online. It was really in the very beginning, before eBay banned the practice. So in retrospect, I probably could have turned it into a career. But my parents, they wanted me to do something a bit more serious. So I followed the footsteps of my older brother, and I went into finance. And after I graduated college, I worked at a bank. I worked as an analyst at a hedge fund, and that was going to be my career. Then several years later, my boss was going through a divorce, and we shut down the hedge fund, and he took a 3-month sabbatical to really clear his head. Difficult time to invest when you've got so many things going on. Now, during that time, I took to my brother again and spoke to him. At that time, he was getting into product development. He saw a big opportunity, and I decided to team up with him. So I never really envisioned what I'd be doing today as a kid, right? But I also never envisioned selling swords on the internet. What I do is I try to adapt with the times and look for new opportunities.
Yeah, no, that totally makes sense. So I'm curious, was the game that you were selling virtual goods for World of Warcraft?
This is way before World of Warcraft. So this is, I'm older than I look. So this was
online?
So the first game that I recall that did this was a game called EverQuest.
Yes!
So this is years ago. So you played EverQuest, yeah. So I sold items for a game called, for a similar game, but it was at that time, the time of EverQuest, so before World of Warcraft. And then all the players left those games and went on to World of Warcraft.
Yeah. No, that's so funny. That of all of the interviews I've done, this is the first time this has come up. And yes, I did the exact same thing. I did not like it when eBay said no. I was like, man, this was working. You don't understand. I could do this all day. Anyway, so take us on this journey. Finance? So restaurant, games, finance. And it's like, okay, that... help me understand. Very few people that I know wake up going, I can't wait to work for a hedge fund. However, this is what happened. Was this do you like math, or was this truly, well, my brother went this way, so I'll do that too?
Well, to be honest, I actually really liked what I did.
Okay.
I think finance has a bad rap, but I think the word finance is just like saying I work in medicine, and it's an industry, and there's so many different roles that you can do within an industry. So my job was reading and understanding trends and looking at different industries and analyzing them. So I actually found it fascinating and super interesting, and it really gave me a great work at the hedge fund, especially really gave me a great work ethic that to be honest really continues to help me through this day. And I think finance can get a bad rep. You can have, different opinions of some negative actors in certain industries or people that maybe defraud someone. But that's like, a doctor cutting off somebody's the wrong leg and hating all doctors because of a malpractice suit. So in what I was particularly doing it was really just a job of analyzing. And to be honest, I really liked it. And if it wasn't for my boss getting divorced, I probably would have stayed in that field, and that's what I'd be, and we wouldn't be talking here today.
So you know what? Let's talk about that, because see, I know that there's a number of would-be entrepreneurs listening who are experiencing something that they're interpreting or receiving as a not so positive event, but yet I've found, or at least it's been somewhat consistent, that oftentimes those things that feel, less than great carry with it the freedom to then choose something completely different than what you may have originally chosen. And in fact, something that often turns out to be better. Has that been your experience?
I think it happens all the time, and I think I actually heard a crazy story yesterday. So my fiance loves. There's a certain Peloton instructor, and she really loves to take classes with her. Okay. And turns out this Peloton instructor has now been on. Is more than just an instructor. She's becoming more of a celebrity, and she's was on the Steve Harvey show. She's going on a different talk show, which is more than you'd expect from a simple fitness personality. So we Googled her. Turns out she used to be. So she's a Peloton instructor now. what she used to do, she was a corporate lawyer, and she was at a bar and correct me, this is what I read in Wikipedia last night, but she was a bar in the East Village, and there was a gunman or some form of criminal that essentially took the place hostage, and he had I believe doused her in this is what I recall from yesterday, doused her in kerosene and was threatening her, to light her on fire, and she essentially either talked him down or got him, distracted him until someone was able to, kind of overtake him. And this was an extremely, obviously, life-altering event that she decided that she was going to quit her career and pursue, something else. And then obviously got very into fitness, and here we are today. And I'm sure she never once envisioned her life going in that direction, but oftentimes, and I just think it's an incredible story, because I think adversity really, really makes you look at things and look at things with a clear eye, because oftentimes we're on a path, and it might be a good path, it might be a bad path. I mean, but it's a path, and you won't veer from that path unless something changes. And oftentimes and especially with entrepreneurs, generally something steers you in that direction. And for many entrepreneurs, what they wind up doing, or the business that you know of them doing, oftentimes isn't their first business, and it might have been a pivot from another business. So, the magical story that you hear from people, you oftentimes don't always know how they got there in the first place. But it's generally not a straight line, and usually involves many detours.
Yes, we call it lots of practice. That was my practice company. So this is the real one, at least for now. Totally understood. So, take us on this journey. How do we go from, finance and we get the initial event, but oftentimes when we're presented with, hey, you could choose anything, how do we end up with TaxDome?
Of course. So really started to see, this was kind of really around the time when Silicon Valley was really starting. It was really at an early point, right, in the late 2000s, I guess, before 2010. And this was really the time when it was still fairly nascent, and you didn't have as many software out there as possible. But I really started to see software coming into disrupting every field, so to speak. And that's why this really excited me, is because my brother was getting into product development, and this was kind of the intro into it. So started working with an accounting firm that wanted to go remote, and they were really the first one to do it. So now the idea of being able to interact with your accountant over the internet is fairly commonplace, right? I mean, that's the whole existence of TaxDome. And actually, just last year is the first year in the U.S. that over 50% of tax returns were completed over the internet, so through a client portal. But go back 10 years, this is a completely novel concept. And this firm wanted to go fully remote, and they wanted a way to scale their business where they can hire people to work on their platform, but be able to manage all the interaction, but really create a CRM and a platform for both their accountants and for their end clients. And that was the opportunity. And we started building that for them. And we really saw massive growth for them. That they were really the first ones to do this, but it was a remote-only business. And that firm went from 10 to over 75 people in their accounting firm, which is much higher growth than a standard accounting firm. So about 3.5 years ago, we saw an opportunity and really learned about the idea of SaaS, right? So instead of just you buying a piece of software that you pay a one-time fee and you get a software, and if you want to buy upgrades, you do it again, you pay a monthly fee. So it's software as a service, and you're able to that's really the entire model. And most software is going in that direction if it isn't there already. So the business idea for TaxDome was to create a similar platform, but instead of for one firm that's going to pay an IT company to build it for them, but to make it a platform that every accountant out there can really sign up for and integrate into their business without having a large IT budget and have to manage that, but really a plug-and-play solution for other accountants out there.
It's funny that you bring this up. One of the things that I was just discussing with my accounting team, CFO, etc., was that specific line item on on the P&L around all of the SaaS products that we use. And I'm looking at it and I'm like, wow, I think it was somewhere in the neighborhood of $12,000 on a monthly basis that is just going to SaaS products in order to execute everything that we do. And I'm like, man, I got to go through that and maybe I can trim some of that down, which is getting to my point. The ones that are getting the axe have either the features I thought were great have been deprecated, improved, etc. by somebody else for less money. How, in that particular business model, do you handle things like churn and avoid a race to the bottom? Because that's what it feels like when I'm looking through this. I was like, oh, I used to pay $200 a month for this, but now this does it in their trial product and it's free. There's a lot of that I've been witnessing over the past couple of weeks. And when I think about the SaaS idea, I'm like, man, that's expensive. And you've got to constantly do R&D. And I'm just like, oh my goodness, what is that literally your world, or am I off here?
Well, you're both on, and you actually hit the nail on the head of the business model of TaxDome. So we offer an integrated solution. So if you're an accountant, or if you're any business, right? It really could be anybody, but let's focus on accountants.
Sure.
As you mentioned, you need a lot of different services that you need to run your business, aside from the actual deliverable that you deliver to your clients. So for TaxDome, we offer an integrated solution, which really gives you all the business processes an accountant or tax professional may need to run their business in one place. So that means we don't believe that small businesses should have exactly what you're talking about, where you have to go through line items and figure out all the different vendors you're paying and see which ones you need. So what we do is we offer you, a CRM, the ability to get paid, invoicing, a client portal, mobile app, workflow automation, and the list goes on and on. And really the idea is document storage. So everything, your Dropbox, document storage, electronic signatures, really any kind of interaction that you have, you meaning the end client, have with your accountant, or the accountant needs to have with his or her team, contractors that they hire, anything like that. Really the idea is they come to TaxDome, that's the only line item on their P&L, and then everything else, meaning the actual tax prep or whatever their deliverable is, that's the only thing that they have to focus on. Because many accountants and many people in general aren't super savvy, and they don't want to deal with 20 different softwares. And not only that, but if you have a suite of software, you still have to spend time integrating it. So not only are you spending lots of money on all of them, but you have to integrate them all. And
stop hurting me, bro.
Well,
you're hurting me right now. I know.
Exactly. And there's tools to do it, right? So there's Zapier is a great company, and there's other companies that do similar, but you still have to be fairly savvy to set that all up. We want to reduce the friction for the average person that can't do that, but wants to have an accounting company, maybe has had an accounting company for years, and realizes they want to go more digital, that there's more optimal ways of doing things. Where do they go? That's kind of where we come in, and we want them to just know that if I go to TaxDome, I really don't have to worry about anything else. All I have to do is focus on the tax.
But and I hear you. And at the same time, you said one thing that you said is like, if they want to. And in my head, I'm like, do they have a choice? I mean, with today, the way the world works, if you don't end up going digital, this type of work is probably being done by a human in some way, shape, or form. And that's, at some point, that cost structure is going to put you in a very tough position to be able to be competitive.
Oh, 100%. And you hit the nail on the head in your intro when you talked about large firms, right? So right now, even before that, most tax preparers, and many people don't know this, but most tax preparers in America, at least, are small businesses. And they have to face like every industry is, they're facing a technological revolution, right? So big businesses have resources to combat change and really adapt quickly. And not only that, but in today's day and age, customers, so you and the average person that has an accountant, you come to expect the same seamless experience that you see in every industry. you expect that from all your service providers, right? So even medicine is adapting. If you think about it, you go to a doctor, they probably have a client portal now where you can access your documents. And medicine is super slow to change, right? So small businesses are really left at a disadvantage of having to cobble together off-the-shelf solutions that aren't integrated. And this becomes A, expensive, and B, cumbersome to integrate, as we mentioned, if it's even possible. So if you really think of it as the story of David and Goliath, our goal is really to give the Davids of the world a fighting chance in the face of digital change, right? So not only are we an all-in-one solution, but we try to be as easy as possible to set up, and we want to be affordable. And really, we champion small businesses because that's what most tax preparers in America are.
Got it. Now, okay, so on that point that you just said, when it comes to ease of setup, that's actually one of my evaluation points as I go through the my list of products that we're currently paying for, because at the time that, when we started that, using them, we were at a different spot, and in a lot of cases, maybe I was the one actually interfacing with that particular piece of software, so it wasn't overly necessary that the ease of use go to the lowest common denominator, whereas now it's somebody else's job, and while I may be proficient with it, the software is maybe not as intuitive or what'd you call it, a seamless experience. What you're taking on in my head is like, okay, there's a lot there, and then you still have to deliver good UI UX. How is all of this possible?
Hello there, entrepreneur. This is Jay Massey, and what I want to say to you is that the number one mistake that I have ever made in business, number one, has been waiting too long to do the books, waiting too long to get the bookkeepers, the accountants, the CPAs, the CFOs involved, and I don't want you to make that same mistake. That mistake cost me over six figures, and now for a significant discount, you have the ability to get your books together using FreshBooks. So what I want you to do is I want you to go over to gofreshbooks.com/cashflow diary. Again, that's gofreshbooks.com/cashflow diary. FreshBooks is the easy to use software designed to help you, the small business owner, the freelancer, get organized and save time on invoicing, getting paid faster, keeping those books in order so that it becomes a bonus for you to do your taxes as opposed to a burden. Go over to gofreshbooks.com/cashflow diary and get started today. And now let's get back to the rest of the story.
It's definitely a lot to do. I agree with you. It's certainly difficult, but what we try to do is we try to be as transparent as possible. So, and you mentioned the client experience. So, if you go to our website to taxdome.com, we have a simulated account. So what that means is you can click on a button and you can see what it's like in our system without ever having to sign up. So you can see what it's like as somebody that owns the firm. So say a manager. What it would be like for a contractor that person hires. And so the same situation that you mentioned, it's not just the person that starts the company, but people that you hire, how easy is the system to use for them? How quickly can somebody that you hire get into your process? Is it gonna take them 3 months to learn your processes that you're paying for? Or are they gonna be able to know exactly what they need to do and deliver for you right away? And then finally, you can see what it's like for your end client. So in our world, there's three roles. There's the company owner, there's people that work for them, and there's their end clients, such as yourself, that log into their portal. So if you go to our website, you can see exactly what it's like in all three roles in a simulated account. And for us, that's critical because we get great feedback from users that aren't even that give us feedback, and we get to beta test a lot of things of what's working really well, what's not. But at the same time, we are able to be super transparent with our customers and our potential customers, and we get to offer. We remove the friction, as you mentioned, in terms of people that want to sign up and are interested in checking us out, but they don't want to. People don't want to sign up. People don't want to go through a long sales process. We want to remove that friction as much as possible.
It's funny you say that because there's a number of softwares, which I will not name because I don't want people mad at me, that when going through the evaluation process, I'm like, good Lord, I got to do all this just to get the demo, It's not, I'm like, come on, man. I just want to compare this one thing, how you do this one thing, to this other company over here. And having to jump through all of those hoops is just too much. But there's something that you said that I want to make sure every entrepreneur heard. You make a part, and what I think is genius is that a part of your sales process, you also have your listening process in place. It's like, here, simulate. This is what it's going to be like for you once you are on the other side. In marketing terms, they get a sample of the after before they've even tried, and yet at the same time, you are able to see exactly what they're doing to be able to even improve that, which obviously has got to improve your conversion at the same time. And I think that's genius. And that's amazing. But you said something that I think everybody should begin to hear. You said the word transparency, and as business continues, and because business is basically relationships, and in the age of the internet, etc., you can't really hide from much. I find it interesting that in a accounting sense, that you've chosen transparency as something to stand on. I would love to understand a little bit more about how that became one of the values.
Sure. So even though we are in the accounting industry, we're a software company. So I think when people think of accounting and transparency, you think of, safety, security of your documents, things like that. And obviously for us, that's a core tenet. That's just a fundamental part of your business, or our business, that people need to feel that their documents are secure. But I think in terms of what we are doing, in selling and providing a software solution to accounting professionals, for us, a big hurdle is people fearing change, right? And most accountants don't like change, and that's one of the things that we try to combat. Is how can we make it as easy as possible for somebody that that hears about us, or that is looking on the internet and is looking for something that'll help them make their business more efficient, and maybe looks for one of the features that we offer, stumbles upon us. And we hear this all the time, that people come to us because they were Googling and they find one specific feature and they're like, oh wow, you also offer this and this and this and this and this. I didn't think that this was possible because I was going to get 10 different solutions. So our goal is that as soon as that person comes to us and hears about us, they really value us as a company from a transparency standpoint, and that they know exactly what they're going to get with us. They know how to reach us. So not only do we have the simulated account, but every single day we have a standing demo. So we have a daily webinar, live webinar, every single day with Q&A. And that touches on the transparency aspect. Again, is you have a question, you don't have to go through 10 salespeople to try to maybe schedule a demo who are first going to pre-qualify you to see if you're a qualified lead, and one to the next. You come on our demo every single day, you get to watch our overview, you get to ask any questions that you want, and they're answered right away. Because we want to remove, as I mentioned, we really want to remove every friction. And it purely from a business structure, we do not want to be a sales-heavy company. I think that anytime, and this is in software especially, you have a very high, when you focus on enterprise sales, and that's not, we focus on small to medium-sized businesses. And when you have enterprise sales, you have a lot of salespeople. And what that does is that winds up raising your prices because you have to pay all these salespeople. And for us, we want to be so easy to use and so transparent that people just sign up and they use it and they feel that this is a great value to them. You have an account manager and you have customer service reps that are able to help you, but it's nobody's job to upsell you. It's nobody's job. Nobody's making a commission off your sale. It's just like Netflix, right? You sign up, you use it. Nobody really has to teach you how to use it. It just works, right? Maybe your niece teaches you how to use your Netflix, but most people turn it on and it just works. And from a business perspective, from an entrepreneur perspective, that's really how we're trying to build our company, is not sales heavy, but product heavy, and for people to feel that they're getting great value from us, and not just that they have a good relationship with a salesperson that gets them a deal.
Yeah, no, totally. I totally get that. So, if I was listening close, or if I wasn't listening as close as I am, I would get the impression that what you're saying is that I can finally get my receipts to my bookkeeper in a timely fashion. That's what I'm hearing.
That's true. That's true. You can open your TaxDome app and upload them right from your phone or from your desktop.
That's awesome. That's awesome. That's awesome. So when you look at the landscape for entrepreneurs, for yourself in the industry or not, I'm curious, what is it that you see, or what other effects do you see technology having in general on business?
I think it's having it's reducing the barrier to entry. I think that's the best way I would describe it. So the same way, 15 or 20 years ago, if you wanted to open a business, you had to spend money on phone systems and, mainframe computers and all that. You had to buy a lot of infrastructure. And then came along the idea of Amazon and Amazon Web Services. So for people that don't know, Amazon Web Services provides essentially a scalable way for businesses to have their computing needs and back-end needs to scale as much as you need. So instead of having to buy actual infrastructure and then assume how much you'll have to assume your needs, you basically just pay for what you use. And so as a business grows, they're able to just pay more to Amazon without having to do anything else. And there's other companies that do similar, but this is really the core tenet of AWS and their business. And for those that don't know, the reason that Amazon is a $1 trillion company is because of AWS and not just because they sell everything on the internet. That's also a big factor. But if I put my investing hat back on again, it's really the AWS that drives that. So AWS and similar service cloud computing really have reduced infrastructure costs and startup costs for technology firms. Now, at the same time, services like ours, and I mean, there's a million services out there that we're talking about, all these different vendors, but what it does is it allows small businesses or potential entrepreneurs that maybe want to have a small business or hopefully a big business one day to start a business with low risk. Right, so you don't have to spend hundreds of thousands or however many dollars on an idea, unless you have an inventory business, obviously. But if you have a service business, you can start a business really easily, really cheaply. You can get a website up and running. You can get, if you can sell things on Shopify. You can your payment processing, your community, your CRM. All of these tools can be done through so many different startups out there. And they're not even startups; they're billion-dollar companies these days, but an entrepreneur can start a business with lower risk today than ever. And I think that's part of what's really driving the economy and driving all this entrepreneurship. Now, at the same time, I actually think that there's a bit of too much entrepreneurship to a certain extent. I think entrepreneurship is great, but I think that nobody should feel pressure to become an entrepreneur. And I think that it's very sexy these days to call yourself an entrepreneur and to do that, but it really isn't for everyone. And oftentimes people see the glamour and they think that, people are doing yoga at 2 p.m. and hanging out and having coffees and relaxing, and they don't really see what it's like to run a business, right? Nobody's going to post on their Instagram of all those late nights and all those angry emails that they're dealing with, and people don't talk about that. And I think that there's definitely a different side, and I think you definitely have to be okay with failure. You have to be okay with rejection, and you have to be okay with pivoting to be an entrepreneur. And if you are that type of person, then wonderful. And there's the world really needs that. But I don't think that people should feel pressure to go into it just because it's the sexy thing today. Just like finance was the sexy thing 15 years ago, and now it's not as much anymore.
Well, coming from a native New Yorker, I will have to accept that. Yes, 100%. Now, the interesting thing, though, that you just bring up is about failure, rejection, pivoting, change, willing to listen and adapt. I mean, I can see, I see that thread all the way through, like everything that you've done, because you were listening, and that's just how you seem to navigate the world, which raises the question, is this a skill or is this something you were born with?
I think definitely a skill. I think it's definitely something that I think has become easier later in life, at least for me. I think purely from a listening level, I think being able to listen and to take rejection, I think requires vulnerability. I think that especially when you make a product and somebody's giving you negative feedback on it, it could be very difficult to hear, right? It could be difficult. Someone is essentially saying that what you made doesn't solve their problem, or what you made, they have a different vision for it. And it's very common and it's totally normal. But I think one way to look at it is defensive and get upset and feel that this person is attacking you. And another way to look at it is to really listen to what they're saying. Try to understand is, okay, maybe there's a better way to do it. Or even if you think that person is wrong, but maybe how can you change your, in our case, software, or how can you change your offering so that they don't feel that way? And maybe change one or two little things where you can still keep your core product, but don't alienate that person. And if you can, you really need to listen to all feedback, good and bad. And that, I think, is crucial to any business. And especially to a newer company, you really need to listen to your customers to improve.
I love it. So I know for those that have listened this far, they're enjoying this process and are probably even curious to find out more about what you guys got going on. What's going to be the best way for them to track you down, Ilya?
So TaxDome.com, TaxDome. And as I mentioned, we offer a daily demo. So we go to a lot of conferences around the country. So for the accounts that are listening, you may have met us at various CPA shows all around the country, different societies. But if you haven't, welcome to meet us on the internet. As mentioned, every single day, 2 p.m. Eastern, we have a live webinar where we go over the product, and you are able to ask any questions that you wish. So that for us, that's really the main place where people come and hear about us, and they chat with us online.
I like it a lot. So as we wind down, I've got a final question for you because I'm curious to hear your answer. There's a number of entrepreneurs who have listened, and they were in one spot when they first started, and now they're in a different right now. Just hearing the conversation between you and I, and sometimes that's enough to get them to that decision point. They draw that line in the sand, and it's kind of like what I call the precipice of decision, if you will. And oftentimes as humans, when we get to that point, we have a companion, and that companion often comes in the form of a voice, and it's a voice that reminds us of, well, you're going to do what? I don't think you're the right kind of entrepreneur. You can't really make that happen. I mean, what kind of effect could you really have on the marketplace? And for some people, they're related to that voice. So my question to you is as follows. Let's pretend that this time it's going to be different. This time, they're going to follow through. In fact, they're going to do exactly what you suggest in the next 24 to 48 hours. What would you suggest that they do?
I'd write down the pros and cons, and I forget where I've heard this somewhere. It's possibly like a Tim Ferriss hack. I don't know, but definitely big on writing down the pros and cons of your potential decisions, because I think keeping everything in your head is one thing, and when you write it down, the answer usually becomes really clear. So I find that to be really helpful when I'm trying to make decisions, or when they're analyzing a business decision, or few things in life are black and white, right? You have mostly gray, and the goal is navigating that. And I think writing things down on paper in really 2 columns really helps to make those decisions.
I like it. I like it a lot. So, and I definitely like the way that you're attacking what is a challenge, because I can't imagine there's an entrepreneur listening who hasn't had the conversations with their bookkeeper or CPA or whomever around this process in some way, shape, or form. And there's probably more bookkeepers who are frustrated with entrepreneurs and just like, what am I going to do? And yet you've chosen to take that on, and that's commendable. And I definitely appreciate you guys for being willing to go out there, do that, and definitely make that happen. And just let me be one of the first to say thanks for taking the time to share your knowledge, your wisdom, and your insight here with us today at the Cashflow Diary.
Thank you so much for having me. It was a great convo. Thank you.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, you know what time it is. It's time for you to move at the speed of instruction. What does that mean? That means get over to TaxDome.com. Why? Because you have this problem, and you just heard a potential solution. And for those of you who just said to yourself, well, I got that handled, you should go anyway. Here's why. Because when you trip over, run into an entrepreneur who's doing certain processes right, I bet you could learn from them. Ladies and gentlemen, it has definitely been fun talking to you guys today. I look forward to talking to you soon. Until next time.